Hello to everyone watching on YouTube and listening on Spotify. It's another episode of NRG Insights. And for those that have been following closely recently, we're doing a Rising Stars series at the moment. So people that are up and coming, easy to say, coming up through the industry, whether that be with lending, with broking, or like today with Glenn, with kind of ancillary products into the market. So today I've got Glenn from Brickflow. Thanks for joining me.
No, thank you for having me, Marcus. Much appreciated.
No problem at all. No, it's good. And you were nominated by a couple of people at your work, so you got a good, shove to come on.
I'm obviously doing something right. I'm obviously doing something right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So talk to me. Tell people about Brickflow and tell people about your. Well, let's start with your journey. Tell me how you got to where you are now.
So my journey in the finance side was more of I kind of fell into it than anything. It wasn't a pre-planned journey in essence. So my first job in finance was at Barclays. So I joined there as a cashier, so the normal rite of passage, should you say, at a bank.
You'd be surprised. Actually, there's loads of people on this Rising Stars that have come through from cashier.
It's crazy. I think it's almost like because I've done the retail thing as well, right? Which is the pre-finance. But so I started as a cashier in Barclays in my hometown. So I'd done that for around about a year, and then I moved into the more personal banking side. So where people you do your loans, you do your overdrafts, that kind of thing. And then from there, an opportunity come up again within the same branch at that time to move into the business sector.
Nice.
So that was more helping your newly established, your newly formed businesses that were just basically getting out the blocks themselves. Get their banking facilities going, get them a bit of lending going if what they were looking at doing, and buying property. So that was the first rung into kind of like my more speaking to like the corporate level of clients. And from there I moved up to, so the way Barclays worked is they structured it from an RM point of view, is you would go up in level of complex nature of the business and level of turnover and level of debt. So I moved my way up in the corporate structure there to the point where I was there all in all about 5 years. And funny
That gives you a good grounding. Sorry to jump in, but I speak to lots of people who do that kind of cashier. And actually, here's an interesting question whilst I think of it. That's not going to be an in soon for lots of people to come into the industry because we don't.
No.
There's not loads of cashier jobs. Banks are shutting, aren't they? So that we talk about that barrier into the industry, and it's a great one for you guys who are, aren't 18, 19 anymore, but have that still in the younger generation. But there's not that role anymore, is there? So, but I mean, how do you think that transition into financial services is going to be?
There definitely isn't that role no more. So like you say, the high street is completely changed, isn't it now? And the banking world and the finance world is completely changed. Obviously, working for a tech firm now, I'm kind of part of that. I think when you
part of the problem.
It's
not. It's a solution, but it's just funny. It's just changed. Having that kind of really obvious avenue in, which loads of you guys have. Is now non-existent. So sorry, that just suddenly came to me. That's another.
That's right. And to be fair, that avenue is definitely not, like you say, it's not there no more. And you've got to look at different angles within the finance sector. But I think from when I moved on, so Barclays, I was there about 5 years. Just before I was due to, before I left, I was offered the next rung up. But at that point, I was approached to move into specialist finance. So for me, one of the key frustrations within a bank is you have a tick box criteria, should we say, what you can and what you can't lend against. And the amount of times where the frustration would kick in when you've got good business owners in front of you, good businesses, that the debt makes sense. Barclays just wouldn't do it.
It kind of takes out the sales ability as well, don't it? Because this is our product. If we can do it, we can do it. If we can't, we can't. There's no grey area of the bank, is there?
No, and I think it wasn't just me that was getting frustrated. There was a fair few within my kind of maybe age and bracket of you want to really help these people, but you just couldn't. So I took on my first specialist finance role, which is at a firm in Kent I was there for about 2 years on the commercial desk. So that was learning the ropes and learning, especially for the first few weeks, you're like, this deal can actually be done. Like, you're surprised that
you're ready to say no.
Out there that facilitate it, and you're like, you're not quite sure it's possible, but it really is. There's so much out there that's possible that you just don't know when you're in that corporate narrow world. But when you move into that, there's so much more out there that can be done. So I'd done that for a couple of years, and then I got approached after that to set up this a IFA's mortgage business. So there was an IFA firm, again, fairly local to myself, that they had their IFA bit they've always done, their pensions, their investments, and that side. They had the mortgage permissions, but they didn't have anyone to do it. They didn't know what to do in essence. So they asked me to kind of come in, set up that side. So we set up the CRM, sales process, lender access, basically the back office part to be able to facilitate that move and start to grow that out, which it worked fine. You know, there was a couple that we had a regulated residential mortgage advisor that worked alongside me. We had a couple of case admins and that side of it, and it worked. But then after a little while, you kind of think, because you've done that setup yourself, but on behalf of another individual,
someone else,
why don't you do the setup, right? Like, why don't you look at actually setting up? You know what you're doing in essence. You know what processes and what things you need in place, and it can be yours. You haven't got to be part of that.
Yeah, that's that entrepreneurial kind of spirit, isn't it? You think, I could do this. I've done it.
Yeah, I've done it for someone else. Why don't I give it a go for myself? So that's what I've done. Done that for a little while, and then at that point, it's when I had my first child was born. But as many people know in the broking world, there is very much a feast or famine a lot of the time with your pipeline. So at that point, I wanted more of a stabilisation.
And it's interesting. We can talk about that, and you can be open about it, because it is tough set up on your own. Because from the outside, it looks relatively easy because you can sell mortgages, right?
Yeah.
I can sell mortgages for someone else, and I've set it up for someone else. Very different when you're in there, isn't it? And I talked about this, funny enough, I think it was just this morning, there was a clip that was online that I was talking about, that you don't get to do the thing you're really good at all the time when you're trying to run your business. And it's fucking scary, and it's even scarier when you just have kids as well, right? So it's
it's massive. And I think the thing you forget is when you're an employee, you're not wearing all the other hats.
Yeah.
But as soon as it's you've got to be everything. And you don't get, like, when you're doing the broking and when you're doing the face-to-face meetings with the clients and you're on site, it's the bit you love about the job.
Yeah.
But you don't get to do it.
It's a minimal part of being a business owner.
Yeah. You don't get to do that part. You're like, oh, okay, well, that's the finance bit. Okay, or that's the marketing bit. And you've got to look at all of them different bits. And I think that's where it's a massive realisation of
I think,
how much.
just to add to that as well, because people have been listening and thinking about setting up their own, that roller coaster comes from, you're only one man, right? So you've got to go out and market yourself. When you market yourself, you pick up leads, and you've got to service those leads. Whilst you're servicing those leads, you're not marketing yourself. And then, ball aches happen along the way when it comes to the journey. So you're dealing with that while you're doing that. You're not selling while you're doing that. You're not marketing yourself. So and then the leads dry up. So you've got to market yourself, which means you're not. It's a constant. I think people just need to consider that when they're setting up. There's so much more to. I flog mortgages for someone else. I can do it here. There's massive parts of it, and it's different. And obviously timing and that kind of thing is a huge factor as well.
A lot of things have got to kind of sit in a row for you, right? To actually,
you got to get lucky.
And I think I've got huge respect for people that that are in that side of it and still inside now, because it is tough.
Especially the last few years, it's been tough. You don't know where your leads come from. It's not the funnest place in the world to get up and go to work.
No, exactly. Especially when you've got things like COVID kicking in, value is not going out, and and like I say, that the environment that we've been in the last few years, where rates have been this way, that way, products pulled at the last minute, and it's
exhausting.
Yeah.
If it's a new business, it's exhausting. I've seen businesses 20, 30 years going by the wayside for the same reason. It's an energy thing that it is at the beginning or at the end. It's fucking tough.
Oh, it's massively tough.
Let's move on to some more the more positive side. So that
the Brickflow side.
From that, you went into
Brickflow.
How did you meet the guys at Brickflow?
So I was introduced by, funny enough, a recruitment agent that got me into my first commercial mortgage broker.
Oh, scumbags.
So, I can't say nothing about them on that side, but I got introduced by them, and they was like, and I haven't spoken to you in years, Glenn, but there's this role that I think you'd be spot on for. And I was like, okay, let's just have a listen what it is. And then I had a first, kind of off the record chat, if you would, with Ian. Ian Humphreys, the founder of Brickflow. I think one of the first things I said to him was, I was like, the industry's been crying out for this tech. When you're sitting there as a broker, your admin.
How many years ago was that, then?
So I've been at Brickflow now for nearly 2.5. Nearly 2.5 years. You
kind of got to inception as well, because I spoke to him years ago, and I loved it. At the same time, you could see why some brokers it was conflicting for some people as well. Do you know what I mean? It was a very, they've had to pivot a fair amount, haven't they, with the car and the products, etc. But it's no one can deny it's a smart tool. I think it's just, it's getting into an antiquated industry. Trying to change something is a tough gig for anyone.
It's massive. I think even now, we're in a lot stronger position, like you say now, where the market kind of understands what we are, where we want to be, who we are. And I think, especially when I first joined, it was it was still very early doors. I think there was probably 6 of us when I joined in the team. Maybe just there's not a huge amount of people in the team at that point. And I said to Ian, I was like, you need to be crying out for this. Like, brokers are natural salespeople. Like, they want to be in front of the client. They don't want to be keying in multiple mortgage applications, doing multiple back office admin. If this can alleviate some of that pressure, they're going to enjoy their job more, but they're also going to be better remunerated for what they do. So I think that was the first conversation I had with Ian. I said about it. At that point, it was only a dev finance model as well. We've grown as a business a lot since that time.
Once you've got that in tech, I mean, I'm no tech whiz, but I mean, I speak to Fraser and Ian stuff, and all right. So once you've got that kind of the platform, you can put it to other things, right? Can't you? Once you've done the hard bit, the hard graft, the coding to get it right, you know, it transforms quite quickly, doesn't it? It's like it's the worst it's ever going to be, right?
Yeah, that's it. That's your viable minimum product. That's what you got, and you can just build in blocks and move on it that way. Which is what we've done. And to be fair, when I came in, like I say, in January of 23, it was dev finance only, and then the following year in January 24 is when we built out the bridging finance part of the platform. Which was, for me, considering I've never done any kind of product development, never been in tech, was a bit of a, you know.
How was that? How was it with the language of tech people and salespeople? Because you both wanting the same thing, right?
Yeah.
And I spoke to guys about this before. On any kind of tech platform, you do speak different languages it comes to.
You massively do.
What you want, you both want the same thing, but it's not. It doesn't come across as easy.
No, and it's definitely not. So you massively, like you say, like the way that you speak as a salesperson, especially the way that you think as well. It's kind of like you assume that just changing that button or just moving that bit on a website or
I just move that over.
It takes 30 seconds, and then when you speak to the tech people, they're like, no, that takes a lot longer. There's a lot more places
things holding that in place, and there's stuff in the background.
And I think for me that was the toughest part. It was wrapping your head around. Even the simplest part of tech is not simple. Yeah. And there's so much to it that people don't see in the background. And as you go along, like when I started to build the bridging part and you're specking out all the product part, and then I moved on to build the commercial mortgage part of the platform, again, like you go in again and it's you're constantly learning. Yeah. Constantly learning. And you do pick up their acronyms as it goes along.
Yeah, you start to get it,
But do
you have close connection with those guys, or is it?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. So we work very closely with our tech side, and they're great. Like they are.
You're a tech business, aren't you? You know, you're a financial services business, but you're a tech business.
Ultimately,
especially if you're selling, you know, multipliers, you're definitely a tech business over.
We are definitely a tech business. There's no doubt about that. Definitely a tech business.
How's it going? How's it going now with the market? Like the market knows you now, right? Like it.
Yes.
I've had these conversations with Fraser, and I'm always trying to, like, if I like someone, whether I make money out of whether they're a client or not, I will fucking champion your business all day long, and I really like those guys. So I've always tried to do it. But there's not many people that don't know yet. I think there's some people that need to be educated on how good it is, or, you know, you kind of, well, you can tell me this actually, because this is the rising star side of things, but how do you cope with speaking to maybe some of the old boys in our industry who have just done the same thing forever, trying to convince them that there is a better way of doing something?
I think it's, with the, I think this is the industry in general, this is not just tech. I think it's the industry in general. Like when you've got new entrants as a broker level, not
people in general as well, right? We don't like change. It's a survival mechanism.
There's a massive, like, I think, view in the industry that when you look at it from the outside, it is like you say, like an older the demographic of the specialist market. And I think when you're speaking to that demographic, you've almost kind of they very much want the examples, like the proof that it works. Because they've got their process, they've got their 10 lenders that pop into the office and see them every few weeks.
270 lenders and use 5, right?
That's it, exactly that. They go on the golf days and that side of it. They do all of that side of things.
Which is great, by the way, because you can't. I don't think you can test deliverability as well.
You can't
online. You know, you have got to have those relationships. But just getting them to change the mindset of like this could work for you.
I think it's very difficult, and I think it's kind of getting them to change their ways, change their process. But I think when they can start to see that it streamlines what they do, and as we know from a brokering point of view, the fees are massive. Like it's a very like, you know, what fees are earned, and that side of it is huge. I think when you can show them that their earning potential can grow, and ultimately, I think it's also relating to them that the borrowers want this. Like, they want the ability to be able to see, like, if I want to go and get a flight, I can go on Flight Scanner.
Yeah.
If I want to go and get car insurance, I can go and compare the market. If I want to, like, I can do
Yeah,
all
yeah.
of that as a
There's so many
consumer.
variables to commercial finance, isn't it?
Yeah.
Difficult to kind of to nail the whole process, maybe like without brokers, for instance. I'm sure.
Oh no, we
But
we are 100% pro broker. Like
yeah,
Ian and Freddie, like that is
yeah,
100% pro broker. Everyone, Ian's an ex broker himself as well,
yeah, yeah.
right? So I think it's a very
Yeah,
pro
that's where the
broker
thought process came
business.
from, wasn't it?
Yeah, he was
Like,
Alexander
brokers.
Hall. So I mean, it's a very pro. It's a very pro broker model. We want to support the intermediary, and when we're having the face to face meetings with our lender clients, they are the same. They want to support the intermediary because intermediaries do add value to their clients.
Hmm.
There is huge value add that an intermediary can give when they're given that that full view of what they can help that client with.
Yeah, but for me, and we're not going to talk about Brickflow forever. We're not plugging the product. We're
Yeah,
talking about you. But
yeah,
for me, it works really well when you have got some amazing thoughts in this industry that probably do know way more than it could take on a bit of tech. However,
yeah.
you can't get that process of getting them to train the next person is very, very different. I think if you're growing a business, this is a great tool as well, just to
It's
help
huge.
people like to move into the industry. There's so many people desperately trying to move into commercial because we all know there's more money to be made, right?
Exactly that.
Not why as well. Like I love commercial. I love commercial because it is two commercially astute people saying, "You make money, I make money, he makes money, and we're all happy." And we're not talking about Doris's mortgage where it's an emotional attachment to it. So
No.
that's why, rather than just you make more money. However, training someone new in it is a tough gig, right? You can't give someone 15 years experience.
You can't, and
You
that
cannot
takes
tell them the market that quickly. So I think it's an awesome tool to get people in and get the market moving to the next generation.
Yeah, that's the thing. It takes huge time to build that knowledge as a broker, and that's what a lot of our bigger broker clients are now using it for. New entrants coming in, learning that, helping them as that part of their training plan to kind of grow
Yeah,
their knowledge.
yeah. That does link nicely into the next generation, I see, because I was plugging Brickflow so much, I'd lost the fact that we're talking about the next generation coming in.
Yeah,
But it's true, though, isn't it? I
it
think,
is.
and also on that next generation, they are going to embrace tech more than me and more than the generation before me. I
Yeah,
think stuff like that is going to only progress. We get that we're not becoming obsolete. I
no,
think we just understand that things are assisting us now, right? And I think it's going to be easier to explain it to the next generation because they would have grown up with the chat GPT on their phone and cheating in exams and
oh
doing
yeah,
all the things they need to do.
they've got to be so careful with that, haven't they? The power of AI. But yeah, like you say, like it moves so quickly, doesn't
Yeah.
it? Like it's just so, it
But
moves at such a
even if you look at your platform over the couple of
yeah,
years, it's nuts.
yeah,
It's nuts how quickly things are moving.
yeah. Does
And
move.
but like I said, next generation wise, they're going to keep up with it a lot quicker.
They are, and I think because they're brought into it at a much younger age. Like when I was at school, like even compared to when my sister was at school, like who was younger than me. Like you see, computers are brought like and all that side. Coding's brought in at like very, very early stage.
Yeah, it's
Everything now, and
nuts.
I'm like,
My kids try and tell me their code, and I'm like, no, you're not.
it's crazy, absolutely crazy.
So what barriers do you see? Obviously, we talked about the barrier, the fact that there isn't that old process of going into financial services now. What
Yeah.
kind of barriers do you see for the next gen, especially on like we'll talk about the commercial market, of people just coming in getting that fresh blood in? Because these conversations I have with people are very much you're few and far between, right? Getting young people in the industry, it's not loads. So we're having the same conversations, but
Yeah.
actually, I don't think we're solving the problem of how do we get more people in.
I think there's a few bits to it. So I think one of the bits is when the perception of the industry is like I was saying before that older
Yeah,
demographic,
yeah.
and people
Pale and
feel
stale.
like it's tough for them even to get into that part when the overall demographic is that way. But I
Yeah.
don't think age necessarily means that they're amazing at their job.
Oh
Like
yeah.
someone can be young
You're
and
right.
can
The
be
perception of financial
hungry.
services are that grey man in the grey suit type
Yeah,
perception. But it's weird for me because I can't even fathom that. But I'm in it, so I
yeah,
know how like I don't want to say cool and then sound like an old person. But you know what I mean? It's a smart industry,
yeah.
but it's
It is.
it's perception from from a young age, I suppose, of what you imagine like mortgages to be and finance to be.
Yeah, you imagine, like you say, the suit, the office, the tie, that
Yeah.
side of like that, but that's not the sector we're in. Like the commercial sector and the specialist finance sector is, it's not traditional mortgage, like you say.
Yeah.
It,
Yeah.
it is business people talking to other business people, getting their deals and their transactions and done, and moving on to the next one,
Yeah.
basically. So I think the outside view itself is kind of like maybe like a blocker to people that are even looking. But I
Yeah.
also think maybe as an industry we can do better with that. You know, we can showcase better as an
Yeah,
industry
yeah,
that
yeah.
that's
Educate,
not how
right?
the industry is.
We talk about this all the time, like, and everyone says we've got to educate him, but
Yeah,
we've got to do it. The trouble is, we know, right? And it's great that people do it, like going to schools and explaining stuff. There's a little bit of PR bullshit that comes with that because it doesn't actually benefit you; it benefits the next person.
yeah,
Do you know what I mean? If I go into school now and talk about recruitment to 15-year-olds, that's great, but fingers crossed, when they're old enough to be here, you know, I will have moved on from needing it.
yeah.
But we have to step up as an industry, don't we, as opposed to individuals going into, you know, a school. It has to be a long term how we see the industry growing, you know?
Yeah, and I think to be fair, the schools point is a very good point because in schools there isn't really financial services and that side of it taught. So I think from that kind of when you are that young age, when you're looking at where you want to go, I don't think there's enough out there to kind
Yeah.
of show people the financial services sector and actually what it is.
Especially
What,
with like finance is relatively easy to explain. Like my
yeah,
kids understand like dev finance
yeah,
because we look at houses and I explain that I recruit people
yeah,
who lend the money to build that. You
yeah,
know what I mean? So they've got an understanding of how money works. But I think maybe that's the other thing as well. You know, we talk about the education of money. It's probably not just the industry. It's actually how money works.
yeah,
Like you don't just become a house builder.
yeah.
There's an element to it that you have to learn along the way, and why we borrow money and why we pay back more than we borrow and that kind of thing. So
Yeah,
there's loads to it.
there is, and also I think from an educational point of view, there's not so many like graduate and apprentice and that sort of roles. I think in our sector, like when you go to like other sectors, like the construction industry, like you
Yeah,
touched
yeah.
on there,
Yeah, get you
there's
know you say
huge
from a trade
amounts
and yeah,
of trades and apprenticeships and BTECs and all that side of it that people can be aware of. But I don't
yeah,
think there's nothing really like that in our
yeah.
space
I know
generally.
IMLA are looking at stuff, and I know they are trying. They're doing what they can. And there's a couple of the I can't remember all the acronyms of all different mortgage associations, but
Yeah,
there are people trying to do their best to do it. It's just
yeah,
a fucking slow process, isn't it?
it
Because
is.
like you've got to get into schools, you've got to get people interested, and then you've got to get the next generation, and then you've got to show that it works for the next
Yeah,
one to anyone to put any money into it.
yeah,
So
yes,
it's a tricky one. I always liken it to like this sounds awful because I mean they're not a client. Okay, I used to work for them, but you know, like someone said to me, like Barclays CRM system was shit for years.
yeah,
Everyone knew it, but someone really high up there made a good point of no one's going to spend the money on it because their tenure will be up when you really reap the benefit of it. And I do feel like we're a bit like that when it comes to educating people. We're a bit like, well, fuck it, you know, I'm not going to be here.
yeah,
So that's why the industry will still be here. That's why we have to
yeah,
look at it as like the associations and stuff do, because us personally aren't going to be here to reap the benefits. So people
no,
kind of, and it's selfish, but understandably, what I as well that people, if it's hard to be really committed to do something when you're not going to see the benefit.
yeah. And I think one of the other barriers, as we kind of mentioned, like it's a barrier, but it's also an aid, is the technology piece. Like we said, like the traditional roles and the traditional routes aren't now necessarily there anymore. So
Yeah,
you've got to look at different angles, different routes to market, in essence,
yeah,
like to move into market. And I think sometimes you've almost kind of got to like sidestep yourself to look at before you can't instantly jump forward every time. Like you can't
yeah,
be constantly getting to where that side is. I think you've got to sometimes like take sit of where you
yeah,
are,
yeah.
look and go, okay, I might have to sidestep here to then get me to that part to move on. But
Yeah,
that's
you've
not,
been through that, haven't you? You've been through that in your career. Like
yeah,
you've got. I mean, the cashier route, but actually working your way up. And also, by the way, every single rising star I speak to on this has worked their way up quickly because you've all worked hard. I know we haven't talked about that yet, but is
yeah,
that there's a work ethic that goes with number one. I actually like the fact that I know a few people at Brickflow, and I know they're happy to hire people on the entrepreneurial spirit as well. You know, if you
yeah,
have set up on your own, or I was speaking to TK the other day, and it's a similar thing where
yeah,
I like that. They're not frightened of the fact that you have got that entrepreneurial spirit, which is good because I think that does make good workers. I think a lot of people shy away from the fact that you'll want to go off and do it yourself, or you'll want to go off and set up your own business
yeah.
because you've done it before. I actually think that makes great teams, people who,
Right.
because they can collaborate, they want to help as well. It's not just about having your own business.
And I think that's really important within Brickflow because you are encouraged to kind of go for
I
give it a
think
go.
as
You'd
well, right?
rather
You got to
do
think
it and
about,
then if it doesn't work, you can there's something else.
yeah,
But better than to not try
yeah.
and not try and proceed, not try and progress, not try and improve.
Yeah, and I also think that helps coming from tech rather than financial services because if I speak to someone in financial services, they set up their own business, it hasn't quite worked out. They're not. everyone's scared of that, right? Because they think, cool, they're going to take my clients, they're going to set up their own. But actually, coming from a tech business, they love entrepreneurs because they're thinkers and they get things moving, and that's what you need, right? So it's a good mix of the two.
Yeah, and like I say, the balance is it definitely works.
Good. I said I'd keep you 20 minutes. We've all been talking 25. I think I got my soapbox about education for about 10 in the middle, so apologies for that. The coffee must have kicked in. But if you can give one bit of advice to someone trying to get into the industry now, and I know it's changed a lot in the last few years since you've joined, but what are the characteristics or the skill sets or the things you think maybe, or the one good thing that people should learn or work on to progress in financial services?
I think the way that I would look at it is you've got to be adaptable. You've definitely got to be adaptable. You've got to be able to change. You've got to be able to process change and work with change. You can't just be ticking them set boxes the same all the time. You've got to be able to adapt. But I think what I would say is if you're looking the outside coming in or wanting to come in, I think speak to people in the industry, because like I said before, there's not what the industry is perceived as and actually what it is two completely different things.
Yeah.
So I think there is no harm in speaking to people in the industry, and everyone's generally pretty friendly, right? So speak to the people in the industry, whether it's, you might want to speak to someone where you want to start. So if you want to start, say, like a broker admin, speak to one of them. If you want to start then and move to a broker, speak to who, have a chat with a broker, and then speak to the kind of people on the route that you feel like you want to go, because once you've spoken to them, that might not be your route no longer.
I was going to say, you spread your net far and wide as well, right? Because you don't know what you don't know.
Exactly, and I think the knowledge bit, when you haven't got it, you take note of the people that have got it around you, work with them, but also do it in your own way. I think take in their knowledge, but then present and work and progress how you feel comfortable. Don't feel like you've got to be a robot and just do it how everyone else is doing it.
Nice. Good. And so if anyone wants to get hold of you, Glenn, what's the best way? I mean, obviously all your socials will be on our socials and we'll promote the hell out of it as always, but what's the best way to get hold of you?
So phone is obviously best way. So my contact details obviously.
For a tech business, you know what phones.
No, you still need face to face. You can't take it away. You still need face to face. And then you've got email as well. So phone or email is my best way.
Amazing. Well, like I said, all your socials will be on ours, but it's great to meet you. Great to catch up. Thank you for everyone watching. Thank you for everyone listening. It's been another episode of the Rising Stars, but really useful, Glenn. Appreciate your time, and I'll see you soon.
See you soon. Cheers, Marcus.
Cheers, mate.